What's up, you guys? Happy December and welcome to the Fit Life Podcast. I'm your host, Jacqui Labadia. It's been a couple of weeks since my last episode. I was away and out of the country last week, celebrating Thanksgiving with my father-in-law. It was a great trip. We had a lot of fun. The kid and driving 6 hours with two littles is no joke. It's definitely like a team effort between my husband and I, but we made it. We had a great time. We're going into December and the holidays. Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. This is a time where I feel like a lot of people really struggle with their health and nutrition. It's also a time where people kind of like, they either throw in the towel or they say they're going to start in January, or they want to, or there I have clients who want to see progress over the holidays and have lots and lots of questions about how they can try to go about doing this. And I know it's a stressful time. It's just like, it's so busy, and there's a lot of family dynamics, and it's, all of these little things that kind of add up. Or like, I know at my work, we're doing like an ornament exchange, things that are happening at like my kids' daycares, like all of these little things like kind of add up in terms of like what's on your to-do list and what you need to get done. I also find it really difficult to like how do I shop for my kids and wrap gifts and stuff like that when they're around? You can't. You have to wait. You have to stay up late, or you have to wait until the kids are out of the house, or whatever it is. It's just like a lot of juggling. So it's really kind of interesting to navigate all of this and just feel like you can stay on top of it and do all these things. So to the moms out there who are doing like all of the Christmas magic, like Elf on the Shelf, advent calendars, what have you, all the power to you. It can be, I think there's parents out there who just really, really love to do that stuff. And I think that's amazing, but it's also just like a lot. And I feel like there's all of this layers of obligation as parents to follow through with some of these things because everyone else is doing it, and there's pressure there. And I don't know. I think something that I've been getting good at, especially when I've been exploring like setting boundaries and stuff like that, is saying no to some of those things that might be kind of typical of like the rest of society, but kind of recognizing like what actually works best for me and my family, and how I can navigate that while keeping my sanity intact and not feeling like I'm putting too much stuff on my plate. So, Elf on the Shelf, for example, is something my husband and I are not doing. It's something that we'll say to like my son that, Elf on the Shelf doesn't come to everybody's house, and that's a good thing, or whatever it is, like just like whatever I can kind of pull out of my hat when he asks these questions. But yeah, like I'm like, no, it's just so too many things to worry about. I do have a really great advent calendar. It's a little bit different than the typical chocolate ones that you can buy at the store. We had a family friend gift us this beautiful like wooden advent calendar. So it's got like all of these kind of like think about, those light up Christmas houses like that you kind of display on like fake snow and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of that, but it's like in like, it's like a box almost, but in the shape of a house. And then the advent calendar is like within these little doors in the house kind of thing. And it's really nice. I have never seen anything like it prior to receiving this as a gift. So what the fun part is that we can kind of get creative with what we put into the advent calendar. So instead of like, I think last year I did chocolates, like just like little pieces of chocolate, and something else. I don't remember what I did in there. And then this year, my son is getting there. We had my mother-in-law purchase a Lego advent calendar. So I just kind of like took it apart and put those little Lego sets into the advent calendar for him. And then for my daughter, who's not even 2, so she's not quite understanding of like what's happening. I got like a set of like hair clips and like these cute little like hair bows and stuff like that. So she gets a new one every day. And then both years, what I have done, and I really think this is fun, is I have bought secondhand Christmas pajamas for them. Now, not obviously like not 24 sets because that's insane. But I'll buy like 4 or 5 sets for each of them, and then once a week in one of the Advent days, I leave a little note from Santa, that kind of gives them a clue as to where their new pajamas are. So I used ChatGPT this year, and it actually came up with some pretty cute little like poetic ways of saying these things. And it'll tell them like where to look, and then when they look in that spot, then there's like a gift wrapped, and it's like another set of Christmas pajamas. So it's just kind of fun to like play around with that and get creative. And it's worked really, really well this year and last year so far. So something I'm definitely sticking to and like making a little bit of a tradition with our kids. And I think that's like the magic of being a parent. Like I loved Christmas as a kid, and then there was like a series of years where like Christmas was okay. There were certain family events I looked forward to, but like the magic just wasn't there. And the one really cool thing about becoming a parent is that having that magic return, because now I get to do it for my kids and to, you know, sorry about that. We had a brief interruption. My dog was going nuts upstairs, and it was my next door neighbor, my next door neighbor's kid asking if he could shovel my driveway for me. How cute is that? Um, so yeah, like uh, the magic of Christmas, right? Uh, Something I love, and it's one of those things that makes me sad that one day it's not going to be as magical as it is for them now. So it's just like wanting to hold on to that for as long as I can. Um, Something that was really fun this year too, that me and my friends have done. One of my friends made a really like genius suggestion, and I think I've seen this before, but it just like hasn't been in the forefront of my mind. So if you are a mom and you have mom friends and you're struggling to figure out what you're going to get your kids for Christmas, or maybe you're trying to like pinch pennies or whatever it is, we're doing a toy swap. So what we've done is like me and my girlfriends are generally in a group chat, and we all kind of went through our kids' toys and took pictures of them and sent them to the group chat, and basically chose things from each other so that we can literally just swap toys and like help each other out in a sense that like our kids are going to be getting new toys that are new to them, but they are just like very gently used things that we had amongst ourselves. So I'm really thankful for that, because my daughter in particular, like, and not even 2-year-old, like they're hard to shop for. Like they don't have, like, she has some interests, but she can't obviously specify anything that she wants, so a little bit more difficult to like figure out what to get her. And I think this was like really handy and definitely something I'd want to do again in the future. And just knowing too that kids get new toys all the time, the novelty wears off after a certain period of time, and then it's just like not missed unless it's the favorite toy. So I think it's just kind of like economically effective in this sense, and doing something that's a little bit smarter in terms of like trying not to overindulge in spending and all of that kind of stuff. That it can be the stressful part of Christmas, is how much money everything costs, and trying to like set a standard or meet a standard but not break your bank either. So that was something that I thought I'd share, because I feel like so many more people could benefit from that. And if you have those resources, this is an awesome time to like try to bring that up. So anyways, I had some questions. I posted a question box in my Instagram yesterday asking people what they struggle with the most when it comes to the Christmas holidays. And we're going to address some of those questions today and talk about some things and strategies that we can kind of implement, or at least think about, in terms of how we can navigate the holidays when it comes to our health and fitness goals, and what we kind of want to get out of the holidays and how we want to feel. So the biggest thing with the holidays, I think, is that one, people are so afraid of regression when it comes to all of the work that they've been working towards throughout the entire year. But the thing is, we have to remember that if you are working towards a certain health and fitness goal, we don't want it to end there. This has to be a lifestyle that you are looking to live for the rest of your life. Like, this has to be behavior change first and foremost in order to not only reach certain kinds of outcomes or certain kinds of like goals, but to sustain those goals that you are reaching for too. We're not going to be able to reach a certain goal. So say like you have a certain weight to reach, or you want to be a certain body fat composition. You're not going to be able to sustain that if you stop doing the things that got you there in the first place. Unless, of course, like obviously we don't always want to be in a calorie deficit, but learning to fill your food choices with proper nutrition, learning to move your body as much as possible. Like, and although these things can feel like a chore sometimes, they are things that we don't want to stop because of the number of other benefits and the number of other things that you're giving yourself by living this way. And it's right. So it's not these changes that you're making in order to achieve a certain outcome aren't changes that are short term. Like, these are changes that we do want to be consistent with for a number of factors. So that being said, we also have to remember that Christmas is a short-term season. It's I know Christmas Day is one day, but generally speaking, December, the entire month of December is Christmas for a lot of people, just because there's a lot of different social events between work and extended family and maybe your spouse's side as well as your own family. So it becomes a lot more than just the one day for a lot of people. But it's only 4 weeks. So, and out of those 4 weeks, you're not celebrating something every day. I mean, if you are, holy crap, that might be a whole other, challenge to talk about. But generally, it's the weekends. Maybe a couple of, like, let's say for like the sake of like over explaining or like having somebody on the extreme end, maybe you have 2 events every weekend of December, right? So that's 2, 4, 6, 8 events in the entire month of December. That's likely just 8 meals in the month of December. So if you think about it in that sense, you have 3 meals a day for 31 days. So what does that work out to? Let me do my math in a second. So 3 meals a day in 31 days, that's 93 meals. So if you have 8 meals out of 93 meals that are quote unquote off track, or that don't align with your goals, or that you are things that you don't normally eat, it's not a big deal. I do think that people generally overthink some of these things and get so caught up and so worried that they're going to regress their progress that they forget that this is short term. You have to remember that I think the thing is that when we get so worked up about these, like, say 8 events in the entire month, we then kind of just throw in the towel and we're just like, okay, well, fuck it. I'm not going to do anything this month. I'm going to just enjoy myself. I'm going to have all the snacks. I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to not worry about going to the gym or whatever it is. That's when I think that part is the mistake that a lot of people make, because not just for the sense of progress or like maintaining the progress that you've made, but you're now getting into changing your behavior and kind of undoing some of the habits that you might have worked really hard to build. So that's where I think a lot of people need to remember is that what are the habits that you have implemented into your life that are making your life better and that you would feel worse for if you were to stop. And a lot of that is going to come down to stopping your movement, stopping your water, stopping your exercise, stopping like your how intentional you are about the meals that you eat and what you're putting on your plate. That's when it's going to kind of snowball into other things, and it's going to be harder to get realigned with the lifestyle that you want in order to achieve the goals and the progress that you were working towards the rest of the year. So that's the mistake that I think a lot of people make, and that's usually when we see people like totally fall off the rails and then have more difficulty realigning their life with their goals in terms of like when they want to start back up in the new year. It's a lot more difficult. It's a lot more difficult to get back into what you were doing, but when you completely stop, than it is to like maybe slow down the process or pivot or whatever it is, so that for the sake of maintaining some level of consistency when it comes to the behaviors that you've adapted. So yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. So there is an analogy that I think is really helpful. There's two, actually. One that I really like to use is basically instead of thinking about your health and fitness as a light switch, where all you can do is turn a light on and off, you want to think about it as a light dimmer. So instead of being able to turn a light completely on or completely off, you have a dimmer. Sometimes with the seasons of life that you're in, you're able to have that dimmer all the way up. You are bringing it, you're dialed in, you can do things to the level that you want to do them. That dimmer is up. Then there's going to be other seasons, like Christmas potentially for a lot of people, where you might need to bring that dimmer down a little bit. So instead of stopping completely and turning the light all the way off, we just want to dim it. We just want to dim the light a little bit. We want to kind of like learn how to scale back, but still maintain some level of consistency with the behaviors that are going to result in the progress that we want to see, but also are going to just make us feel better. They're going to make us feel better. They still contribute to like longevity and good quality of life. They help us to be a bit more resilient to some of the things that might be happening over Christmas, whether that's your stress levels elevating or your digestive system being a little bit wonky from eating foods and drinking that you might not normally be doing. So those are the things that we really want to focus on, and that we really want to make sure we are maintaining some level of consistency in that. The other analogy that I had in mind, and it's kind of like the same message, it's like pushing a boulder, right? If you were to think about this huge, ginormous boulder that represents you starting your fitness journey or your healthy lifestyle or whatever it is that you're imagining, getting that boulder moving is the hardest part, right? Like you really have to dig in your heels in order to push it and get some kind of momentum started. But once you have that momentum, it's easy to keep that boulder rolling, right? It's a lot easier to do that. You might have to slow down a little bit sometimes to get over, maybe you're like a hard season of life, we can say is represented by some sort of hill. It's harder to roll that boulder up a hill, and then you're going to have other seasons of life where a little bit easier. Maybe you're going down a hill and it's going to be easier to keep up that momentum. And you might even be going a little bit faster because you just have more in the tank to contribute to your lifestyle changes and the things that you need to do. And it's generally easier. And again, like you're going to, like December is likely a bit of a hill for a lot of people. You're going to be rolling it up. It's going to be difficult, but we don't want to stop it, because if you stop that boulder, you're going to have to restart that momentum again. And that's the hardest part. So just like the dimmer, the boulder is just another good analogy to say to us, like, okay, we don't want to stop. We want to maintain some level of consistency in some regard. But we don't want to stop what we're doing for a number of reasons. So the next part about this, because I know that I say this and then people are like, okay, well, how do I not stop? Like, what can I maintain consistency with? Like, what does that look like? So the next question I would have for you would be, what's the most important part of the holidays for you? Like, what's the outcome that you're looking for? Are you looking to enjoy yourself and to not worry about food for a little bit? Or what the scale says or anything like that? Because if so, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And as I said, you're eating maybe 8 to 10 meals in the entire month that are going to be quote unquote off track, as opposed to the 90 out of 93 meals total. So if it's 10, even if it's like 10 meals out of 93, what percentage is that? 1 second, let me look at that. That is like 1% of your entire meal, of your meals, right? Yeah. So it's very little. It's very little out of the grand scheme of things, big picture. Those 10 meals that are off track is not a big deal. And I would argue too that if you were to allow yourself to enjoy those meals, and then like just make sure you're really committed to continuing the continuity of your other meals being things that you know are nutrient dense, you know sit well with you from a digestive perspective, you know are going to help you hit your protein and fiber goals. If you really commit to those other meals being in alignment with your goals, those 10 meals are probably not going to affect you as much as if you were to allow those 10 meals to bleed into everything else. And that's the other mistake that a lot of people make, is like they don't just keep it to these events. They now make it, they make more of their meals Christmas meals, or they have lots of like snacks and things like that, and they essentially turn it into an entire month long, binge or overconsumption / underactivity type of thing. And then that's where we are going to see regression in progress, but also you're going to end up just kind of feeling like shit too. So I would say that if you want to still feel as good as possible while enjoying those meals, keep those meals to those events. While you're at these events, depending on how you want to feel after the fact. So I'm thinking in the sense of like, I've had meals where I've been so uncomfortable afterwards because I just overindulged and ate like an asshole. Or I didn't get great sleep because I had too much to drink and not very much water. So there's those little times, like kind of tidbits that you might want to think about as well, depending on whether you care about how you feel right after that meal or not. So that's where I would just kind of say, like, enjoy yourself, but don't eat like an asshole. And make sure you're drinking your water, because that's going to help you with your digestion, and just maintain some level of hydration, especially if you're drinking alcohol and like all of those other things that can add up over that meal and make you feel like shit, for the next 24 hours after. But if you want to feel good, eat in moderation. Allow yourself to have some tastes of things that might not serve you from a nutritional perspective, but maybe it's like something that's special to you. Maybe it's grandma's pumpkin pie and it's something that you're just not going to pass up, right? Allow yourself that. But try to fill everything else up with like the proteins and vegetables and most of those things, because they're going to be delicious either way. But also the benefit of Christmas and Thanksgiving is that the majority of these meals are going to have protein and vegetables, right? It's the overconsumption and the binging part that is going to make you feel like crap afterwards. So yeah, like if you are that person who does not want to worry about progress per se in December, but they also don't want to stop what they're doing, that's what I would recommend. Keep it to those events. All your other meals, try to keep them as regular as possible. And then that way you just have some kind of regulation and some kind of consistency, and your body will thank you for it from like a digestive perspective. You'll have your energy still. You're going to be able to better manage stressors, and you're going to be able to sleep a little bit better still, because you're not allowing those meals to bleed into other things. So that's what I would say in that sense. Now, of course, we do have people who might want to stay dialed in, and that's okay too. So in this sense, what I kind of like would recommend to some of my clients, depending on how hardcore they are, would be something like if they are somebody who's tracking, I would say try to kind of like bank your calories so that the majority of those calories can be contributed to that meal. I'm not the kind of coach who's like, track your holiday meals and like try to be, whatever. If it's an untracked meal, it's an untracked meal. That's fine. But what you can do is you can track the meals prior to that event or before or after that event, whatever it is. And you can try to save as many calories as possible for that holiday meal. So we can kind of stay within range of like maintenance or whatever it is, have you in that respect. So again, like it all comes down to like the preferences of the individual, the goals of the individual, what kind of outcomes you want to see. So that's where like a lot of the advice that I have around the holidays would be very much based around what that person wants and how they want to feel. The other thing to kind of consider is your expectations about the holidays and what the results and outcomes of the holidays are going to be. So, for one thing, if you're going to be indulging in your holiday meals, which again, like if there's nothing wrong with that, to allow yourself to enjoy yourself or whatever, but don't be disappointed when the scale doesn't move or you gain a couple of pounds or whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with that. For one thing, like I'm not sitting here being like, shame on you for not having the scale move or whatever. That's normal. It's totally normal to go up a couple of pounds, even if you're not necessarily eating in a surplus or overindulging. Just the fact of eating things that your body doesn't usually have, or even with like alcohol and things like that, it all results in some sort of like body or like water retainment. And that's going to cause a little bit of a weight gain. And that happens. And that's fine because in January, we can get dialed back in again and feel and like lose those pounds very quickly. It's not a big deal. So that's where I would, yeah. So those are just some of those recommendations around mitigating holidays, adjusting your expectations, seeing the big picture, and remembering that Christmas is supposed to be a fun social time with your loved ones, with people that you care about. And there's so much more to this than whether you gain weight or not, right? It's not just about the weight. It's about your ability to show up and enjoy yourself and not worry about these things, while also remembering that you're making memories and there are other factors of happiness here that I would argue matter more than what the weight on the scale says. The weight on the scale is always going to fluctuate. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter how much you've lost. You're always going to fluctuate. And this is one of those times where you just have to accept that the weight on the scale might spike up a little bit. And there's nothing, it is what it is. And it doesn't say anything about you as a person. It says that you enjoyed yourself for the holidays. And I think that is something that is overlooked in the sense that 50 years from now, when you look back on Christmas of 2024, are you going to remember how much you ate or are you going to remember how much fun you had? So things to consider here, right? Like we're always going to have like those trade-offs in these different seasons when it comes to the decisions that you make in the moment and the benefit that you're getting from it. And sometimes the benefit of enjoying yourself and making memories and just being around loved ones without worrying about your food is going to outweigh the benefit of losing a couple of pounds or maintaining a couple of pounds, right? So keep that in mind. There are things in life that are more important than what the scale says. But on the other side of that, the part that I do want to kind of hit home is that I think that more so than weight management, more so than the weight management piece of this, it is about how you feel. Like I think that's where people end up feeling a bit more kind of ashamed of their choices, and is when they feel like shit. So in order to avoid feeling like shit while also being able to enjoy yourself, just don't eat like an asshole. And I know like that sounds like kind of harsh, but it's true. And it's something that I think it was Jordan Syatt that said it, and it's just something that stuck with me is like when I catch myself like reaching for food that I don't necessarily want, but I'm reaching for it out of habit or because it's in front of me or whatever it is. Sometimes I just stop myself and being like, you're eating like an asshole right now. Like you really don't need this, and you're not even like enjoying it that much anymore. So like why are you eating this, you know? So it's a lot of like there's a lot of like factors that go into this, and it's a learning process, but at the end of the day it doesn't really matter, you know? So this is where I think a lot of people just kind of overthink the holidays, and just that overthinking piece leads to anxiety. That anxiety leads to people throwing in the towel and saying fuck it because they're too overwhelmed. And then it snowballs into 4 weeks of chaos instead of having some sort of like intention behind how you're managing everything. So that being said, here are some of the questions that I had regarding the holidays. So my one client, so I asked, the question was, what do you struggle with the most over the holidays? And my one client answered snacking. And so this kind of, I wanted to start with this one because it kind of ties into what I'm already talking about. And snacking is one of those like sneaky bitches that if you are, you know, unintentionally snacking without like measuring it out or, you know, like, yeah, like having some sort of consideration for it, because a lot of us will tend to like dive into the bowl. So I'm picturing like a Christmas event, right? When there's like all these snacks everywhere and you're just kind of like talking and you're like mindlessly eating as something is in front of you, something like that. That can be really sneaky and sneak up on you in terms of like digestion, in terms of overeating and things like that. So what I would really recommend is if you're at an event and this is happening, try to like make sure you put things on a plate, because that just helps to like moderate how much you're eating and just it still gets you the tastes of the things that you're looking for and that you enjoy, but you're moderating how much of it that you're having, so that way you can still enjoy it, but you're just trying, again, like not diving into asshole territory. So that's really helpful. If it's snacking at home, maybe you're taking home snacks. Maybe you're making Christmas cookies and they're kind of sitting around your house or whatever it is. I would suggest just trying to set up your environment in a way that snacks are out of sight and out of mind. What I do, because I have kids and kids need snacks and whatever it is, you know, all that stuff. I'm short, so this is helpful for me. I keep it in like the highest cover above our fridge. So I have, in order to get them, I have to get the stool and get myself up there in order to get the snacks. So I will do it when my kids ask me for specific ones or whatever. We also have snacks that are within reach for them that I don't mind them like helping themselves to. But that's a huge thing, is like adjusting your environment so that you can kind of manage again how much snacks you're having. When you are reaching for those snacks, it's the same kind of concept applies. Make sure you're moderating by putting into a bowl. And then that way you finish the bowl, you've had the taste, and like you're good to go. Palatable snacks. So again, like my mind is thinking snacks like cookies, pretzels, chips, like things that essentially are not nutrient dense. They are literally made for taste. Like they have no nutritional value whatsoever, but they taste delicious and we are allowed to enjoy that, and that is totally fine. But the sneaky bitch part is that if you are mindlessly snacking, those are going to be calories and, you know, non-nutritional pieces of food that are now going to be in your system, and that's where people start getting like worried about the weight spikes that they're going to have and all of that stuff. And then also like it just contributes to overall like lower energy, like brain fog, like all of those other things that are just going to make us feel a little bit more crappier. And if we're feeling crappier, then we're going to be less likely to show up in other aspects of our health and well-being, like movement and exercise and stuff, because we're just not going to, like, quote unquote feel like doing it. And that's another like segue that I could get into. So anyway, snacking, moderate, adjust your environment, make sure that you are putting it in a bowl, and allow yourself the snack, allow yourself a small bowl, whatever it is, and then that's it, because it's just for the taste. So yeah, that's how the some of the suggestions I would for snacking. A friend of mine answered, being social when all I want to do is being in my Christmas nest. So that is something that she struggles with, and I 100% like relate to this at all levels. Some of us, it's like, it depends on the person, right? Like, some of us really thrive, are extroverted, and we really thrive in social environments, and that like gives us energy. And then there are some of us that are maybe a little bit more introverted, or like, I think I'm an ambivert, like I'm a little bit of both. It definitely depends on the social situation for me for whether it gives me like positive energy versus not. But I do find too, depending on how much social activity is going on, at some point I need like alone time to recharge. Like, that's just like part of my MO, is that too much social time is really exhausting for me. And it doesn't matter who it's with, or whether it was good or bad or whatever. I just need alone time at some point. So with this, I would say that this is where it's really important to set some boundaries. So maybe, opt out of the work Christmas party and don't feel obligated to attend. Maybe it's combining Christmas parties with somebody. So instead of having a bunch of small ones, like, is there a way to have like one bigger one? And I know, like, in that sense, that might not always be like beneficial in the sense that it might sound overwhelming, but then it's like one and done, and you're not constantly spreading your numerous days, but there's just going to be like one day where you'll need it, and then you'll have more time to rest. It's hard. It's a very hard season with all of these things. And then if you have kids and they have social events and all of that other stuff, then that's all there too. And then I would also just say, like, just make sure that you are carving out some time to recharge as much as you can. So making sure that you're prioritizing your sleep and prioritizing stress management as much as possible, getting out for a walk for 10 minutes a day in the fresh air, making sure you have a solid bedtime routine that you're really sticking to make sure that you can get some good quality sleep. Even if you're not sleeping with the amount of quantity we would essentially want, like, getting some good quality is really important too. So really, like, prioritizing those things can be helpful, just in terms of like making sure we are recharging our batteries as much as possible before these social events happen. And then just like being able to have that resiliency as this month kind of goes by. And I know that's, again, easier said than done, but that's where the benefit of these other lifestyle factors can really play a part, is that they all kind of bleed into each other, and they all have like a cyclical effect, in the sense that, like, they have these multifaceted benefits when it comes to how resilient we are and how we can better manage some of these things that make us feel a little bit more stressed out. Yeah. So the last question was routine. It was actually from a couple of people. So one person had said routine. Another person added to it being like how to make structure during time off to stick to good habits. So these were both clients of mine as well. And that is definitely something that I think some people struggle with, is creating a routine and like sticking to it. And I think the thing to remember is this also ebbs and flows. Like I think that I would say that my routine does not look 100% the same every single day. It's just that I have things that I prioritize in my day, and the level of prioritization differs each day as well. So it's a little bit more complicated, I think, than a lot of people think. And yeah, it's It's one of those things, it's a kind of a difficult one to talk about without having specific context to a person. But in the name of like people being on holidays, and maybe you struggle with structure outside of work, for example, like maybe your weekends don't have much structure, and that's okay too. Like we can have this flexibility and still have priorities to kind of complete. Um, so I think that that's kind of like what I would stick to, is just instead of like being really focused on having a routine, just be really focused on the few things that you want to incorporate into your day-to-day life, regardless of what that day looks like. So is it getting your workout session in? Is it just making sure that you're moving? So even if you're not going for walks or anything like that, just making sure that you're moving and getting steps in can be really, really helpful. And it's also just something that's kind of, it's really flexible to prioritize in a day, because you don't have to necessarily do something specific in order to get steps in. It's really just making sure that you're not sitting on your ass all day. Of course, going for walks can really help with that, especially if you live in a small space or anything like that. So maybe that is something that you want to be flexible with, but still implement. And then I would also say nutrition as well. And again, like nutrition, I wouldn't say is part of structure. It's just really intentional. Like you have to have a good idea of what you're going to be putting on your plate and why, because of these different benefits. So it's not necessarily part of your routine, but it's part of how you approach your routine or approach your nutrition when it comes to each of your meals. What I would say is part of your routine when it comes to nutrition is when you're having your meals, which can be really helpful in just making sure that like you have some sort of habit that's going on. So having breakfast at a certain time, having lunch at a certain time, having dinner at a certain time, like unless an event is happening, but that's a way to like structure your day, right? So if you know you're going to eat at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and then at 6 o'clock at night, you then are already creating some sort of structured routine because you have those things happening. And then you can kind of know, okay, well, today I'm going to work out before breakfast. So maybe I'm going to work out at 7 o'clock, have breakfast at 8 o'clock, maybe from between 8 to 12 when I eat. Like that's another chunk of time where you can kind of plan for whatever needs to be done. Maybe it's housework, maybe it's spending time with your kids, maybe it's getting tasks out of the way because you work better in the morning than you do in the afternoon. So you just have these kind of like pillars of your day that you can work around, and then know how you're going to fill that time by just kind of mentally preparing yourself ahead of time. And again, like this depends on like the context of your routine as it is too, like, right? Like, is this working around work, or is this an extended period of time off? Is this, so like, but again, like these are just kind of like basic things that we can implement to help us structure our day in a way that's still going to like allow us to make sure that we have the time to implement certain habits that we're trying to build. So my one client who asked about the structure during time off, for example, for her, she's really good about getting her workouts in before work. It's the weekends that she kind of struggles a little bit more with, because it's a little bit more all over the place. So it's just a matter of like, okay, well, how do I set myself up so that I can make sure I get a workout in or a walk in or whatever that is. There's also the concept of habit stacking. And this is a cool concept in the sense that like we all have habits that we do every single day, whether we realize it or not. Maybe it's the first thing that you do when you get up in the morning is go to the bathroom. That's a habit, right? Maybe it's right after you go to the bathroom, you turn on the coffee maker. So something small that can be helpful with this is like, when you turn on that coffee maker in the morning, the new habit we're going to attach to that is that you're going to drink a glass of water while that coffee is brewing. So like that is like a water goal, for example. So just making sure you're getting your water intake in whenever your coffee is brewing. It could be, after you have your coffee, instead of sitting there and scrolling on your phone, how about we go for a 10-minute walk and you can scroll on your phone during your walk, right? Like if that is a habit that's already there, how can we stack it with something that's actually going to give you more benefit than what's actually happening. Or like, I guess that's not fair to say, but if that habit's already there and you're already killing time doing something there, how is there something that we can kind of pair with that is more in alignment with your goals? That's a better way to frame that. Yeah, so routine is a tricky one because it's complicated in the sense of like, what does this person do for work? What does their day look like? All of those things. But yeah, like I would argue too that this is a really great question because Christmas definitely throws our routine in some ways. But I also think this goes back to that idea of like, it's only a handful of events in the entirety of the month. That is that may or may not disrupt your routine as it is. So that being said too, part of the success of people who see progress using health and fitness, or who have successfully made health and fitness part of their lifestyle for the long term, is the fact that you have to adapt. You have to understand how to pivot, and instead of replace, so if something is happening, if there's a Christmas event or like a get together or something like that, but it disrupts your current routine that allows you to stay in alignment with your goals, it's not that we want to throw out that routine. It's that we just want to adapt it and pivot in a way to make it happen still, while also just working around whatever is happening that's throwing your routine for the day. So, for example, I'm thinking about how we want to take our kids to see like Christmas lights. So that might disrupt our routine in the sense that like maybe our kids are going to bed later. Maybe we're having dinner out instead of having dinner in, or whatever that is. Maybe it disrupts like when I work out for the day or whatever, like when I usually work out at a certain time. It's not that on that day, I'm not going to say, okay, I'm not going to move that day, or I'm not going to work out that day, or I'm not going to eat, nutrient dense foods that day because this is disrupting my entire routine. It's just that, okay, this is happening today, that day. So how am I going to adjust my routine so that I can still fit in all of those things that are still really important to me and that I'm still going to get benefit from? So maybe I work out earlier in the day. Maybe the day before, I pre-make a couple of meals so that I don't have to worry about breakfast and lunch, and then all we have to do is worry about dinner when we go out to the lights or whatever it is. Maybe it's also understanding that my sleep routine might be a little bit off because we're coming back home late. And that doesn't, I know for me anyways, it doesn't usually like really impact me on that level, but I might expect that the next day I might be a little bit more tired because I was handling two really tired kids. Maybe they didn't get a great sleep because of that disruption. Whatever it is that could happen and could be thrown at you, I now just have to understand that I might have to adjust the day after because we had a late night. So like there's these things that we have to understand that they're going to happen, and things are going to disrupt your routine. We have to learn how to adapt it and how to pivot, and just make sure that like there are things that are going to happen regardless of what your day looks like. So it's not always a matter of like, okay, this is going to happen at this time, and then this time, and then this time. Sometimes it's just kind of a matter of like, okay, this is happening in my day, and that's going to be a big chunk of it. How do I work around that to make sure that those other pieces that are important for my health and lifestyle and how I'm going to feel can still happen? So that is the big piece about routine and maintaining some level of structure. It's not that the structure is going to look the exact same every day. It's just using your knowledge of the day and how it's going to look and adjusting accordingly. Yeah, I don't know why I'm feeling like so out of breath when I'm talking right now. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. And I know like it's hard because there's not always like a straight black and white answer to these things until I get more context from somebody. So when I'm answering questions like this and trying to keep it kind of general for anybody who could be listening, that is like, this part is like the tip of the iceberg, right? What the context of it based on each individual is the iceberg that's kind of under the water. that's where I kind of find talking publicly can be a little bit difficult, because I obviously can't address the context of each individual when I'm talking to whoever is listening. So that's where the coaching piece is really helpful, because I get to know these individuals on a deeper level, so literally under the surface of that iceberg. And then that's the chunk of it that we really work on, is like that individualized piece where I can actually learn about the details of their day and then help them adjust their routines accordingly, or whatever questions that they have, right? Like I get to know that's the part I also just really love about coaching, is like getting to know each individual and how unique their situation is, and kind of helping them to get creative in how they can adapt their lifestyle to the routine that they essentially want. And it's the job of the client to then execute or continue to learn and pivot and make those adaptations so that they can learn for themselves and figure out what really works for them. But I'm there as that guide to kind of like point out things and be like, hey, like this might work, or how would you feel about this, or whatever it is, and trying to like be that person who's on the outside looking in, that can see the bigger picture a little bit better than somebody who is like in the thick of it. So that's kind of like the cool piece about one-to-one coaching and how individualized it is, because again, like as I'm talking on a podcast, I can only give you the tip of the iceberg. I can only give you so much to answer like a specific question, but answer it in a way that can be applicable to everybody. So if this is something that you're struggling with, I'm all ears, and you're always free to send me a message with this question, or like to get ideas or anything like that. I'm an open book, and you don't have to be a client to ask me any questions. So yeah, these were some of the things that I feel like a lot of people struggle with. So they were really good questions in terms of like what the general population struggles with during Christmas and navigating holidays and special events and all of these things. I know it can feel really difficult, but we will get through this. And you can get through this by still enjoying yourself and not feeling like you're depriving yourself, and not seeing any regression in your progress. So I would say like the big takeaway here is just remembering like not to overthink it, adjust your expectations, and even if you do gain a few pounds over the course of the month, it's not a big deal. There are far more important things to remember during the Christmas season to be thankful for. I mean, if you think about it, being worried about gaining a few pounds over the course of the Christmas holidays because of celebrations and meals and family events and being with loved ones and the Christmas magic with your kids, that is a privilege. It's definitely like first world problems to think about that as an issue, where it really is a blessing. So I think that's something that everyone should remember too, is that if you are in this situation where, you know, you're chasing goals and stuff like that, but you have all of these to kind of manage, it's a challenge for sure, but it's not something to be forgotten, that it's also a privilege to have these things too. So anyways, that being said, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to comment or send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. All of those contact informations will be in the show notes. If you are enjoying my podcast, please feel free to send me a 5-star review. I would love to see your feedback, but also the 5-star reviews are really helpful in just getting my podcast out there and for anybody else who might be wanting to listen. All right. I will see everybody next time, and have a great day.